I call the honourable member for Gippsland.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. And it's with great pleasure that I join the debate in relation to this report of the Standing Committee on Education and Training, looking into adolescent overload. And I commend the report, having had the opportunity to read through it over the past 48 hours. And although I'm not a member of the committee, I'm particularly interested in education issues as they affect regional areas. And I commend other members who have already spoken on the report. Member for Swan, and I understand Member for Braddon will make a contribution as well, I believe. And the member for Cunningham, and for her very thoughtful and common sense presentation of the issues. And the member for Cunningham's forward, I think, is quite illustrative, and for any members who are interested in the issue to have a look at the forward and the recommendations in particular. And I just want to quote from that forward, where she refers to the fact there are considerable positive benefits for students who combine school and work. Those who find the right balance are not only rewarded with a range of social and economic benefits, but their chances of successful transition into further education, training or work are significantly enhanced. And I take that particular paragraph, it really picks up the theme of the member's contribution here today, that overwhelmingly there are many positive aspects for students to have part-time and casual work, but it is tough to find that balance. And it's almost impossible, I believe, Deputy Speaker, for any government at state or federal level to make hard and fast rules in that regard, rules or regulations which would require students to work a maximum number of hours per week. It simply won't work, and the students themselves wouldn't cop that type of system. They do need that flexibility, and some students, as I said, will cope better than others. But there's one area that I'm not sure if the report covered it in any detail. It relates to the issue of seasonal work undertaken by students. And I find in my community, which has a very significant tourism industry, that we have an emerging problem, I believe, with students in between years of that 6 or 8 week break they might get at their senior levels of schooling, where they pour a lot of hours into casual work in our community. It goes beyond casual work, Deputy Speaker. It is the 40 and 60 hour weeks some of these students are doing at a time when having a break may be in their best interest. So finding that balance is the really tough issue I think the report addresses, and I think it's a very significant social and economic issue, and that public policy hasn't necessarily kept up with the changes as the member for Cunningham correctly identified. And we have in Gippsland in particular, a lot of regional communities, a real challenge to keep our students at school. So finding a way to balance that opportunity for them to get some part-time work, to get some independence, but then maintain their studies is a critical issue for us in regional areas. The Gippsland region has one of the worst education retention rates in Victoria, compared to a state and metropolitan rate in excess of 80%. In 2006, just 65% of Gippsland students finished Year 12, and these figures naturally translate into a lower participation rate for Gippsland students in university and higher education. And I've spoken in the House on that topic many times in the past, and I'm sure I will again in the future, particularly as we refer to issues surrounding student income support as we go forward. Deputy Speaker, the report acknowledges the changing nature of the casual and part-time employment workforce in Australia, and as the member for Cunningham referred to some of us a little bit older, I can refer my very distant youth riding to work in Sale. I was actually a Woolworths checkout boy and a bag packer at the end of the line there, and the big promotion I got was to go to the fruit and veggie section for the second half of my term as a casual employee. And the member was right that the employment in those days for students was based around Thursday nights, Friday nights and Saturday mornings, and that was the full extent. They were the only hours that were available anyway, and I thought that was probably a reasonable balance. It was about 12 hours a week. As a student attending Year 10, 11 and 12, you could maintain that workload, and there are enormous benefits, I believe, for students to have that type of part-time work. Now, with the longer operating hours that members have referred to, and the longer shifts, and the huge increase in the prevalence of fast food outlets, there are far more hours available to students. Increasing demand, particularly in regional areas where we do have an older population, for some of these businesses to seek a younger market. And let's be honest, the students are paid a lower rate than more mature workers, and there's some economic benefits for the businesses themselves. And I think they need to handle that issue with a great deal of responsibility going forward, and I'll refer to that a little bit later on. There's one other area that, of course, in rural and regional areas, it's sometimes difficult for students to actually access part-time work as well, which I'm sure some of the students have raised in their contributions to the report. Having said that, Deputy Speaker, there's over 260,000 young Australians who are combining school and work at any given time. And it's my personal view that part-time employment is incredibly important for young people. In fact, I have 4 young children, and when they get to the age, I'll be encouraging them to get out there and get a part-time job, because I think it does develop some very healthy habits for young people in terms of developing a work ethic, learning new skills. I think one of the great things that a part-time job does, it helps young people to develop their self-esteem, and it builds pride in themselves and what they're able to achieve independent of their parents. And we've got a whole generation of parents, I hasten to say, Deputy Speaker, who have become the helicopter generation, where we're hovering around our kids all the time and trying to protect them from every great unseen threat. And I think the helicopter parents could fly off every now and then and let the kids just get on with their part-time work, and they develop a lot of great skills. And I think they surprise us sometimes what they're capable of doing as well. So I think there's a lot for us as parents to learn from watching our young people when they get into that situation where they have some independence, and they are quite extraordinary in terms of what they can contribute in that working environment. But again, I hasten to add that it's important that we find balance for the students themselves. But as I said, it does give them independence and the opportunity to make a financial contribution to ease the pressure on their families. And the member for Swan referred to that as an area of some concern. I agree there is some concern there if it's seen as a financial necessity, and that the families from a low socio-economic background need the students to work to contribute to the household income. But where it's seen as a student who is actually just making a contribution, the students feel a great deal of pride in the fact that they're able to make that contribution. They don't have to go to mum and dad and ask for 10 or 20 bucks. They can reach into their own savings, and I think it teaches them a great many skills that will hold them in good stead later in life. Financial literacy, Deputy Speaker, is an issue of significant concern in our community, where people are finding that they're getting into trouble with credit cards and that type of thing. But if our students have the opportunity to earn money at a younger age and learn to budget and to save and to use their money responsibly on the things that they choose to use it on, I think the financial literacy that develops is another important aspect of having a part-time job. One other area that the members have spoken about is also the opportunity for this generation of students to get an environment where they're part of a team, they're working together, they get to socialise with other workmates, often from other schools, not necessarily their immediate peer group, and it gives them that opportunity to communicate and work as a team rather than sending text messages all the time, which I think is an occupational hazard for many of our young people. And as I referred to earlier, Deputy Speaker, I do understand this real need to make sure there's balance in this whole issue, because the adolescent overload report clearly identifies that there's from the contribution from some of the parents and the students. And I look to Chapter 2, where I think there's a quote here from one of the parents. Anecdotally, parents are telling us that it is a major concern to them that their children are working late at night, some nights and long hours within those late nights. It's often stated that the young people in question must choose between these long hours and late nights or give up their jobs. There is reported to be little room for compromise, and that is an issue for us that I think we need to just understand the competing interests here, if you like. That the students are primarily at school for an education. They're not to be seen as a product of the economy where they're just a working unit of cheap labour, if you like. And that the balance, I think, does need to be made, and a lot of understanding needs to be shown by our teachers as well as parents and the small business sector. And that the importance of getting the balance right is a message that comes through to me continually through the report. And also one area the members have spoken about is the protection for young workers who are most vulnerable at that time in their lives to exploitation. It's very difficult for a 15 or 16-year-old girl to stand up to the boss and say, no, that's not a safe procedure, or that's not the way I understand the work should be done. So I think we do, and I take up the member for Cunningham's comments, that we do have a heightened level of responsibility to care for young people in the workplace, to make sure that their first experience is a positive one. We've both reflected on our time in supermarkets, and I found it overwhelmingly positive to have that opportunity to work with a bunch of young people, and there were some more senior managers keeping us all in line. But we had a lot of fun in that work environment, and also the money was very beneficial to myself and to my family at the time. With mum and dad, pretty basic incomes and 5 kids, it really helped take the burden off them. So it was, I think, a very important stepping stone in my career in developing some responsibility. So taking steps within within this part-time and casual work environment to make sure that students actually are acquiring skills that will help them later in life, I think is a very important aim, and the report does touch on that. It certainly adds to the students' employability and does set them on the pathway to success. I know, and I've had the opportunity to hire people in the past, I've often looked at what they did when they were 15 and 16-year-old. Did they have a part-time job? It gave you a sense that they were had a capacity to be self-motivated and could take responsibility. So when you're interviewing people for work, even later in life, you do tend to check on what they did as a 16, 17, 18-year-old to make sure they have the capacity to balance their lives themselves, that they actually know that there's the time for work and the time for studying and the time for play. So it's, I think it's, we haven't really looked at it much in terms of public policy development, and I think this report is a good stepping stone. I do encourage other members to have a look through it and see and refer to recommendations. There's a few of the recommendations, Deputy Speaker, I want to get to specifically. One was recommendation 2, which looks at the developing and implementing of a national generic skills passport. And these activities should encompass paid and unpaid work, including community and volunteer activities and work for the family business, along with sporting, recreational activities and other life experiences. I think that issue of employability skills and opportunities for some form of accreditation is one area that I think has a great deal of merit. It would be fairly difficult, I'd imagine, to come up with a national stand in that regard, but giving the young people some recognition for the skills they're learning and a lot of employment opportunities in the workplace will involve a first aid course, for example. I know a lot of young people in my electorate are involved in things like the surf life-saving movement, so they're developing skills as they go through, and having that adding to their future employability, I think, is a really positive initiative, and I support those recommendations. I referred earlier to the recommendation, I think number 3. That the Australian Government, in consultation with stakeholders, develop a code of practice for employers, supervisors and workplace mentors to outline their responsibilities in assisting students to document their acquired employability skills. And that just touches on some of the issues about making sure that that we really do have that heightened sense of responsibility when we have young people in our care in the workplace. One other recommendation refers to is the support for students at risk, and that the Minister for Education, Employment and Workplace Relations, through the Ministerial Council for Education, Early Childhood Development and Youth Affairs, encourage evaluation and reporting on outcomes from local programs targeting disadvantaged students with a view to highlighting positive aspects of programs which could potentially be replicated. I think that is a very important recommendation contained in the report, and I don't see all these responsibilities as falling on the government. I can refer to my own community, where local community action in terms of encouraging and providing opportunities for young people has been very successful. Just last week, Deputy Speaker, in Traralgon, the St Paul's School parents group organised a local shopping trip. So instead of mothers paying $40 or $50 to go on a bus to Melbourne and to go to the warehouses and buy their Christmas presents, they organised a local shopping trip with 150 mothers, split into 12 groups of 12 and a few extras on the end, and went around to local shops who were part of the promotion and were giving them a discount to shop locally. It's a message that I promote regularly in my community, and I call it putting locals first, and it's not... it's deliberately parochial in the sense that I'm encouraging local communities to support their own economy rather than always travelling off to the major metropolitan centres. And how it works, Deputy Speaker, in this sense, we've got a school group. I think they spend about $45,000 on the night. It's the first time in my life I've ever said to a woman to go out and spend their money. It's very easy to encourage other people's wives to get the credit card out, Deputy Speaker. But they were going out and I was supporting local shops, and that necessarily leads to local jobs. It's one of our great challenges in our regional communities is providing opportunities for young people. We've referred to the increased number of hours that are available through some of the chain stores and the fast food outlets, but supporting small business is very important for us, Deputy Speaker, and I've made it my job, if you like, to ensure that we promote a message of putting locals first in the lead up to Christmas for the job opportunities it does create for young people in our community. And I think it's a great credit to the parents group at St Paul's in Traralgon that they've taken the initiative themselves and undertaken a fundraiser at the same time to support their own school. So, Deputy Speaker, in the time that I do have left, I'd like to commend the report and the members of the Standing Committee for the work they've done in relation to this issue. It is a very important issue, and I would like to encourage the ministers responsible to have a close look at the recommendations. In particular, the opportunities to support young people as they find that right balance between their academic careers and their working careers, and set them on a pathway to succeed in life. Thank you.